Here's something Ferrari didn't want the entire paddock to see, but after 3 races, it's impossible to hide. The SF26 is losing roughly 25 horsepower to Mercedes. Not in one qualifying session, not on one circuit. Across 3 different tracks, 3 different energy management profiles, 3 different setups. The deficit is there every single time. And the most painful part? Ferrari cannot simply build a better engine and bolt it on. The rules don't allow it. So they are sitting on a problem they can see clearly, measure precisely, and cannot fix yet. So here's what I want you to think about as we go through this. Is Ferrari actually closer to Mercedes than the numbers suggest? Or are we watching a team slowly fall behind while their rivals pull away in the background? Because the answer to that question is going to define the entire second half of this championship. So here's what the data actually shows. The SF26 loses approximately 25 horsepower to the Mercedes W17 on straight-line speed. At Suzuka, Ferrari's race pace gap to Mercedes was 0.32 seconds per lap. McLaren, who everyone agrees is a genuine title contender, was only 0.24 seconds off the same benchmark. Ferrari was slower than McLaren relative to Mercedes. In qualifying, Leclerc finished 0.6 seconds off pole. Hamilton was nearly 0.8 seconds adrift. And this is not a one-weekend anomaly. These numbers are consistent across Australia, China, and Japan. Now the first thing everyone asks is, why can't they just fix it? And this is where it gets genuinely interesting. The Ferrari 067/6 power unit generates less raw output than the Mercedes unit at high engine speeds. That's the hardware problem. And the regulatory system that allows manufacturers to introduce mid-season hardware upgrades, called the ADU, will only open after race 6. Ferrari already has a redesigned engine running on the dyno at Maranello, but that engine doesn't arrive at a circuit until the window opens. They are frozen. But here's the thing most people missed when they watched Suzuka. The hardware gap is only one layer of the problem. Because Ferrari's engineers came out of Japan knowing there was a second layer, one they could actually do something about. The software managing energy harvesting and deployment on the 067.6 is not yet optimized for race conditions. And that changes everything about what happens at Miami. Because software doesn't need FIA approval. It doesn't need a token. And it can be developed, tested, and deployed in a 5-week gap between races. Now at first glance, you'd think a software fix sounds like a small thing, like patching a phone app. But when you understand what the current algorithm is actually doing wrong, you realize this is potentially a significant performance swing. The 067.6 is running out of electrical energy before the end of long straights. Not because the battery is too small, but because the harvesting cycle is not matched to the demand cycle. The algorithm is harvesting too conservatively through certain corners and deploying too aggressively on the straights. The result is a battery that empties before the braking zone, leaving the car running on internal combustion alone at the worst possible moment. All the corner speed Ferrari builds through its chassis advantage gets neutralized in the final 100 meters of every straight. And this is where the story gets really interesting. Because Ferrari's Miami fix targets that exact failure mode. The new software package shifts energy recovery toward the slow-speed corner phases, the sections where the SF26 chassis advantage is already most visible. Instead of harvesting conservatively there, the new algorithm harvests aggressively, so that by the time the car reaches the braking zone at the end of every straight, it arrives with a full battery rather than a depleted one. It connects directly to the lower gear strategy Ferrari have been developing since Bahrain testing, where holding a lower gear in slow corners spins the engine faster and harvests energy at a higher rate. The new software integrates that approach across the entire lap automatically, not just in the corners where drivers have been doing it manually. And it doesn't arrive alone, because Ferrari are also bringing the final specification of the Macarena wing to Miami. This is the rear wing system that rotates approximately 270 degrees in straight mode, effectively inverting to generate lift instead of downforce, dramatically reducing aerodynamic drag. At Bahrain testing, Ferrari's team principal said Hamilton gained approximately 10 km per hour in straight-line speed with the system active. At a circuit with 2 long straights and a tight stadium section, that number matters enormously. But there is a third element to Ferrari's Miami package that doesn't get talked about enough. After Suzuka, where Hamilton dropped from third to sixth in the final 15 laps. Ferrari's own onboard data showed Hamilton's harvest light flashing for significantly longer than Leclerc's. At the critical moment when he was passed on lap 42, Hamilton was still harvesting. His teammate had already deployed. That was not a hardware failure. That was a decision made in fractions of a second at 300 kilometers per hour, and it went wrong. The 2026 power unit architecture puts more energy management decisions directly in the driver's hands than any previous generation of Formula One car. And Ferrari have now brought in a new race engineer on Hamilton's side of the garage specifically to close that communication gap. 3 races in, Hamilton sits 1 point behind Leclerc in the championship. That proximity is encouraging. But the Suzuka collapse showed that the gap between what Hamilton is doing and what the car is capable of is still real. So right now there are essentially 3 ways this story develops after Miami. The first scenario is that the software update works, the Macarena wing performs as tested, the new engineering partnership clicks immediately, and Ferrari closes the gap to Mercedes enough to make this a genuine 3-way championship fight. That changes the entire narrative of the season. The second scenario is that the software helps, but the hardware gap remains too large for Ferrari to consistently challenge Mercedes at power circuits, and the championship slowly tilts toward one team. The third scenario, and this is the one Ferrari's rivals are hoping for, is that Miami is another difficult weekend. The ADU window feels very far away, and the internal pressure inside Maranello starts to build in ways that are hard to contain. So the real question now is, did Ferrari just outline the clearest path back to the front of the grid? Or are they managing expectations while Mercedes quietly extends the kind of points lead that championships are actually decided on? If you made it this far, you already know Formula One is never just about speed. It's about strategy, politics, and the kind of drama nobody sees coming. Let me know what you think is really happening here. Drop it in the comments below.